Hi you jazzy articles. Right, this is video 3 of the series. I haven't made video 2 yet, but I thought I'd do this one just to address some things which people might be a little bit worried about. Because video 2 is going to be about scales really, and a lot of people don't like scales, and probably with good reason. Scales are kind of, you know, they go up and down. So I just wanted to show you that there is a way of using scales to be much more idiomatic and jazzy than that. God, I hate that word, jazzy, but you get the idea. A much more jazz way of using scales, at least in terms of bebop and stuff like that. So this is what this video is about, really. So people don't go, oh, why is he so scale-based? By the way, you know, I was surprised when I started going, because I was always under the impression early on that everything before about 1959 was primarily arpeggio-based, but actually it turns out that it's more complicated than that, as always. While I would definitely recommend any player getting started in jazz to fully master playing chord tones through progressions, it's a great thing to do, and I got a lot out of it. And actually you can play to a very high level just doing that. I've kind of gone back into scales because they're very rich, and also I like melodies. And I think one thing that arpeggios can lack, not always, depending on the player, but you know, it can be a bit, you know, a bit like spiraling around, right? I mean, you have to work hard to. And I'm almost playing scales there anyway when I do that. So just try and break up the outline of that, going up and down all the time. Okay, so I'll start on this right away. So we're going to start with a G7 scale, and the 7th scale, Mixolydian, dominant, whatever you want to call it. I prefer dominant as the name, because it's simple. It's a major scale with a flat 7th. I think most jazz students will know that. And this is probably the most common and important scale in jazz, alongside its very close brother, the Dorian mode. Okay, so we're just going to focus on the dominant scale. You can apply everything I'm talking about to other scales as well. So obviously the main way most people play scales is it's going up and down like that, right? So what I want to say is that probably it's much more interesting to play a note, then go up, miss out a note, and then go to the next note after that. So what I mean by that, instead of going a bit like this, we go straight into that one. And we keep going up till we get back to our starting note. So what that is, that's a 2-octave scale, if you like. It's all the notes of the dominant scale, but just in a different order. The right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. Okay, there you go. Okay, and that is the basic structure of what we're dealing with, and I call it the ladder of thirds, okay, or maybe the Scalepeggios. Other people might call it a 13th arpeggio, but I'm not really interested in what the arpeggio is beyond that's just the scale played in thirds. So the way I'm viewing it, which might seem a little weird, is I'm thinking this is the G dominant scale, and through the G dominant scale I am playing the G scale arpeggio starting on 1, right? So I'm playing the scale, but I'm playing it in thirds. And the reason why I do that is because it gets me more in the melodic mindset. I'm fed up of thinking about harmony. I'm fed up of thinking like, well, okay, so if I have the G7 and then I substitute over the top of that the F, you know, the F major 7th, and I get a G7 sus sound, and then maybe if I tritone substitute it, and then I play that, you know, and then I can, you know, let's get us D flat, Mixolydian, and then from the mix, you know, or maybe not scale at all, maybe just thinking like D flat 7, and then over the top of D flat 7 I'm going to put the flat 7 substitute, which is B major. I'm going to put that over the G7. Then we're going to go. Oh, I can't be bothered with that. So I like the scale-based approach because you just, as I will show in another video, we're just kind of blocking the tune down to simple overarching scales, and there's a lot of movements as well within those scales. You can do alterations to make the cadences work and stuff. But the basic scales are very simple. And you can practice a lot of time on the dominant scale, which is kind of the big one, just getting these lines out. So this thirds thing is interesting as well because it actually suggests a type of harmony, and you can understand it that way, but we're looking at it melodically. Like these chains of thirds, these ladders of thirds are where the scales and the arpeggios kind of mesh. And that's where a lot of the jazz is to be found, at least speaking harmonically, okay? So I suggest practicing this stuff. I mean, there's more you can do with it than this. I mean, you can start on the 2nd degree. And And really, actually, you'll find that for any position that you find for this, there's really only two shapes, okay? One that starts on the 1, one that starts on the 2. And everything else might be starting on a different note, but it's the same shape, okay? So I mean, it's good to run these together into scale patterns and stuff. So this is one using 4-note chords. You go up 4/3, come down. Sorry, you should go up actually. Up a step, then down. That's a good exercise. Let's see if I can play it down. It's always harder down. Sorry, he says demonstrating it very well. Yeah, I had to go a bit slow there, so I'm not as familiar with that one. But the basic pattern. It's kind of that, and that's all based on this basic fingering. You're just sort of picking bits out of it and kind of. That was in triads, okay? So you're kind of just picking bits out of it and just practicing it like that, and I think hopefully you'll agree that it already starts to sound, obviously, like this chord progression. Now the big one for bebop playing is the first one, the 1 Scalepeggios, this one here, and actually we break it up into 4-note chords, and we do it again from the tonic, or the G, and it gets a bit, what do we do now, and so on. Gets out of position, and we can do it up here. Or do it again. And any of the other positions, that you should practice in all positions, of course. And so on and so forth. That's a biggie, right? That's just called A Family of 4 by Cheryl Bailey, and you can add lower notes to it, upper notes. These are lower neighbour tones, and I like lower neighbour tones because like chromatic tones are half step below at the beginning of the arpeggio, because it kind of gives you a bit of an upbeat swing to it. So you start 1, 2, 3, 4, ba do ba yo ba. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, ba ba da ba da. You go 1, 2, 3, 4. And triplets are nice as well. It starts to give you more of that kind of Charlie Barker kind of sound, right? So, and you can link these all up with scale tones as well. So, the classic one is to go up the arpeggio, and so on and so forth, right? So, what I'm doing there is I'm going up the arpeggio and then down in steps, or up the thirds and down in steps. You can go down in steps sometimes, or sorry, down in thirds sometimes. That happens too. I can add in the step as well. That's a good one for gypsy jazzers, because it's 2 notes of string. Okay. That kind of thing, right? And that's it, really. I mean, obviously you can play scales in thirds as well. Yeah, let me try the right scale for a start. Oh, this is a nice one. It's going up the scale in thirds. Keep trying to play G major there. So if you put the lower neighbour tone in before the third each time. Sorry, what am I doing? That's a good warm-up, that is. And that's just just using a lower neighbour tone below each third, so that gives you kind of a nice sound as well. And part of the thing that's nice about that is it's in 3, so you can play it against a 4 pulse and in 8s. So I'm using all ideas that I've been talking about, but you can hear already that it starts to sound like bebop language, and part of that's because of the rhythm, right? So using the neighbour tones on the upbeats, and using also the neighbour tones to turn that third pattern into something a little bit more interesting. I think that's a pretty good 2-5-1 neck, don't you? So, I mean, that's how I've been working with scales. Now, I just want to draw your attention to some examples from the real world. Let's take Donnelly, which most people know. So that's a straight stepwise scale, added notes there, going down to the altered A, which is the third of the F7 chord in the progression. Then we resolve this. The next bit is goes. So we're very much in B flat 7. That's B flat mixolydian, right? B flat dominant, and we're just going. Oh, well, let's go. Whoa, wait a sec. Sorry, the first bit is in A7. Got that wrong. Sorry, yeah. So the first bit is in A7. Then we go to the B flat 7. You can hear that we've gone down to the third. But this is like another third structure here, and then it's the big third structure here. So a neighbour tone, and then we go up. There's a big stack of thirds in B flat minor, which is raising to E flat major. So this is an example of the fact that you can start the stack on different notes other than the just the one of the chords. So in this case, we're starting on. I choose to see that as the 5 of E flat. So we're starting on B flat, which is the 5th of E flat. So what you get. Well, I'm contextualising that as part of E flat mixolydian. Right, but you can also see it as B flat Dorian, and E flat mixolydian and B flat Dorian are really closely linked, as we will see in the other video. So this is another stack of thirds anyway. Go down the steps, like another stack of thirds coming down a step, going up steps, up thirds, chromatic alteration, scale steps, more scale steps, chromatic. Now this is an interesting one. I just want to draw your attention to this. Go. I played it wrong, right? So I went down to the A flat instead of the A. I did that on purpose for a change. So that's A flat. But to make it fit the F7, what we do is you raise the A flat here up to an A, right? So it goes. The interesting thing is we don't do anything to the top A. Keep that as an A flat. And then we resolve to the B flat chord. Now the interesting thing about this is that it is what we might call a cross relation between the A and the A flat. The basic structure of this is A flat mixolydian or A flat Dorian, but we're just raising that A up to A flat up to an A just to catch the F7 chord, right? But then you'll often see this in bebop lines. We have both the A and the A flat in there, and some people choose to interpret that as being an altered thing or a diminished thing. I think it's just easier just to think of the A flat mixolydian with an extra A in it, and you can do things like this. Yeah, sorry, let's go to that line, right? So wrapping round, so it goes B flat A, flat A. Now it's also much more interesting to do that. It's much more interesting to do this than just do this. Which is what I normally do, is just the diminished arpeggio. Or to the major. I mean, that's kind of more like what I play from a gypsy jazz background, but here we have that nice little flourish. So the mixture of the thirds and the scale steps kind of create a more interesting melodic contour. Okay, the whole of Donnelly is like that, really. It's just these kind of mixture of scales and thirds, most of it. So it's a very good thing to study for scale use in bebop. I agree with people who say, including Miles Davis, who say that it was a Miles Davis composition. It doesn't sound like Charlie Parker to me. It has a lot of similarities with Little Willie Leaps, which is a Miles Davis tune in terms of language. But I mean, other tunes you can look at, like Four Brothers. Sorry, it says playing a rock. Okay. See this characteristic mix of scale steps and thirds. But it's definitely, definitely if you're looking in a scale, right, they're using diatonic passing notes, if you like, which are scale steps. Arpeggio-based improviser might say we're using diatonic, might be using passing tones, but the passing tones come from a scale. So you can look at it from the point of view of the scale being broken up into steps and thirds, or you can look at it as being arpeggios with the with passing tones based on some sort of scale associated with the arpeggio. Both approaches work, but I kind of like this because I can forget a bit about the harmony and just look at it in a very generalised sense, while at the same time playing bebop lines which other people might listen to and analyse harmonically and go, oh, he's playing that sub over that. Whereas I'm trying not to think that way. I'm just going like, okay, here we are, we're going to play. That melody going from... I could sit down and work out what notes they are. In that case, I was using a substitute to make it more interesting. So I'm substituting the whole scale. So we're just playing C7, F. I'm playing C7, E flat 7, F, right? Which is a very common move. With some passing tones in there as well. I mean... tritone sub, something like this, which is a little bit more out there, a little bit more exotic. So I mean, you're still using a dominant Mixolydian scale, it's just that you're kind of using it in a different context there. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm on about, which is that by taking scales and breaking them up into strings of thirds and steps, and not thinking too much about harmony, you can kind of have your cake and eat it. You can make scales sound like arpeggios and harmonies without really thinking about harmony at all, because it's all linked with one scale system. If you're interested in looking into this further, I would recommend Barry Harris's teaching, of which a lot of this is taken. I won't pretend that it isn't. And he has a whole battery of techniques for breaking up scales into convincing sounding bebop language. So if you're interested and his approach strikes a chord with you, no pun intended, I don't want it to strike a chord, I want it to strike a scale or a melody anyway. Who needs chords? Then I would suggest going to Barry Harris, going straight to the source and checking out some of his DVDs, which are fantastic, if expensive, but they're worth it, I think. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Bye.